So connect that for me with this paradox. You speak a lot about paradoxes.
Yes.
And, the paradox of grace versus the call to holiness.
Yes.
And
yes.
The conflict that we often experience, because on the one hand we see this God who loves us and
yes.
is tolerant of us, who knows our frame,
yes.
remembers that we are but dust. But at the same time, He calls us to holiness and to
exactly.
How do you
yes,
negotiate that?
The balance is a struggle, I think, and the struggle of life continues with understanding that paradox. But I've been in circles. I've had the blessing of being in denominations and various circles, Christian circles, and I've been in circles where grace is a big thing, and anything that seems to breathe legalism, it's rejected. And I've been in more legalistic communities, as if you wink too hard, it's a sin, and I see that God is somewhere, and I'm not even attempting to try to explain that. God somehow is somewhere in the tension of that, is where we find God. That there is grace, but do we continue in sin so grace may abound? Do we say, well, it's all about grace, so that means I don't do anything. I just go with my lust and my passions, and I just live, and God is gracious. But we see a God who says, it is me who works out your salvation, and we say God, on the other hand, saying, work out your own salvation. Mm-hmm. So God is a God of paradox. God is a God there is a tension there, so that we are called to grace and to live with grace and to understand the power of grace. At the same time, we don't continue in our sin. Mm-hmm. We are to move from glory to glory. We are to, someone says it's not that we become sinless, but we should be sinning less. Mm-hmm. In other words, I should be looking back and thinking, wow, the things I did back then, I don't do anymore. And yes, I may fall back, but I keep rising up again.
To not submit to sin.
To not submit
as
to
an
sin.
Inevitable
as an
condition.
Inevitable condition. It does not define me.
Yeah, but to live in the dynamic nature of the Christian journey.
Yes.
What does that say to us about the kind of churches and ministries that are needed in our time?
Yes. Wow.
What implications do you think that would have? What kind of church is needed in our time?
Wow.
Where you have people who are struggling with so many absolutely dominant
issues.
Issues and just bondages.
Yes.
And
yes.
how should the church deal with that?
With that,
complexity?
yes. Oh my gosh, that's a big question, Pastor.
Yeah. Do we have a whole day?
We have a whole day to unpack it, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Do I have a whole day? That is a really difficult question. I think but you said it. I think you said it so well, that it is being able to live in that tension and be able to understand that it's all about grace. Yes, but God gives His grace so that we can move forward.
What does that do with our preaching, our counseling, the way we select our leaders?
Yeah.
The discipling process.
Yes, I think a tremendous patience with people. I think we, in times past, I think we lived in a very different world in times past, where it would feel as if people got it sooner and quicker. They came into faith and they somehow came into a process much quicker. That being said, I think there were a lot of things that we miss even back then. We assumed that someone may have gotten it, this thing called Christianity, not knowing that we are saved, but we're also being saved. And so there were some deliverances that could have happened and needed to happen in people's lives. That's why we oftentimes would see that it came to head in the 80s, maybe with the fall of the televangelists. I'm not putting them out there. The fact is that they were just in the public light. Mm-hmm. But I think God used those experiences to show us that when we have these deep, dark issues that we have not dealt with, God is a practical God. Mm-hmm. He put us here on the earth for a purpose. Mm-hmm. Or else we would all be like Enoch. We'll be just translated once we give our lives to Christ. We are to walk here and flesh this thing out, as Jesus came on the earth to flesh out, in a sense, what it means to be, God. But He came also to flesh out what it means to be a human being. And so in the very difficult moments of fleshing out, sometimes we are not able to reckon with the humanity. Many churches, we have a struggle with that. Yeah. And we have a struggle with being patient with ourselves and with each other in terms of that, yes, we are we are saved, we love Jesus, but we are also being delivered from the bondages of the past, the generational cycles, the curses, whatever you want to call it. We are being delivered from those things. And when we don't reckon with those things, they catch up with us, as they caught up with Jacob, as they caught up with many of the great men and women of God. The issues that are not dealt with on a practical level, are the things that derail us many times. But God is a God of holistic. So I think the beauty of the 21st century church is that we're beginning to see the holistic side of God.
And
hopefully that helps us.
No, it's wonderful. And I think it also says something about how we ministers, when we're up front and ministering to people, how we also need to apply those insights to our own lives.
Absolutely.
Because we are also broken, we're also needy, we're also struggling with our own issues.
Yes.
And I think there's a call to transparency.
There's a call to transparency.
Appropriate transparency, of course, we know that. But it's also, it calls for us ourselves to be aware of our own journey.
Absolutely.
And to make people also aware of an aspect of what we're struggling with, so that they may be encouraged and also learn from our own.
You can even put it. You can put it much better than that. We have to be transparent. Ministry is calling for that. The younger generation certainly wants that authenticity. The enemy works in secrecy. If he can get you to think that if I tell this, nobody's going to respect me, or if I share this, or if I share, and like you say, you can't share everything, but you can live in such a way that you have nothing to hide. In other words, you live with such transparency and such humility that even when we fail, that people would say, well, you know what, he never, one of the things that was said about my mother when the marriage failed, of course it was disappointing and devastating to people because many people didn't even know that there was a struggle in the marriage. But one of the things that was said of her was that she never acted as she had it all together. She was a woman of character and godly, but she was never a person who could come off cross-judgmental of others. She was always loving and giving and caring.
That was really a protection for her.
That was her protection. And we found that in the difficult days and dark moments of her life, people came to her to the point where, when in the oncology unit, I don't want to call it a hospital in Boston, the visitors were coming from everywhere and the nurses were saying, who is she? Who is this woman that so many people want to be there for her? They want to sit with her. They want to be with her in this difficult and dark moment because she was there with a transparency and authenticity that defined who she was and allowed for grace.
Yeah. And that's probably one of the best methods of spiritual warfare as well. We are living in the light. People know that the enemy has
nothing on us.
He can't accuse us.
He can't accuse us because he is accuser of the brethren. He wants us to keep and think nobody will get it, nobody understands. But we walk with that level of transparency. There's nothing. Jesus said the enemy came and found nothing in me. He has nothing to hold on to because you're living your life in such a way that, and it's not the excuse because there's the excuse, well, I'm only human, which we use when we fail miserably. We say, well, I'm only human. Before we weren't living human, we were living superhuman. At least we were trying to give people that impression. Suddenly when we fail, we suddenly use that excuse. I think we have to live consistently as human beings, yet the divine nature of God is in us. That should cause us to be moving towards perfection.